I'm Alex.
And I'm Shane.
And this is the RPM podcast.
And welcome back to the RPM podcast. Today, Alex and I will be talking about Aston Martin in the 2021 season. Now, Aston Martin have had a difficult year, only picking up 77 points in the 2021 season. They're a new team in the sport, coming from the Racing Point name in 2020. Comparing the two teams from 2020 to 2021, Aston Martin have had a worse year all round. In 2020, Racing Point finished 4th place in the Constructors' Championship with 195 points, compared to 2021, where Aston Martin scored less than half the amount of points, 77, and then dropping down to 7th place in the Constructors' Championship. Now, I feel like there was a lot of hype around Aston Martin coming into this year. Certainly their unveil video was very interesting at the start of the year. I remember Lawrence Stroll, not Lance, is it Lance? No, Lawrence Stroll, is it Lawrence? Yeah, Lawrence Stroll saying...
You're talking about the dad, yeah.
Yeah, if the car looks... If your car drives as good as it looks, it'll be winning loads of points. The car looks great, don't get me wrong, but it certainly didn't win very many points. 77 points is pretty terrible. For a car last year, which was dubbed the Pink Mercedes, and was like... got penalised for being too close to the Mercedes and copying parts of it. How the mighty have fallen. Obviously, we had that aero... or that high rake philosophy change this year. So it benefited the Red Bull cars and, that kind of philosophy instead of the Mercedes. But Mercedes managed to adapt and overcome, and Aston Martin just did not. Sebastian Vettel with 43 points and Lawrence Stroll with 34 points. Alex, take it away. What do you make of the Aston Martin team this season?
Well, like you say, I don't think any other team on the grid has had quite the slump in performance compared to the previous year as Aston Martin did. They obviously had a very solid previous year, the Silverstone team. Obviously, this is the team that used to be Jordan back in the day. That's how I knew them. I used to support Jordan when I was a kid. And then they sold to Midland and Eddie Jordan left, and I was like, this isn't Jordan anymore. I'm going to McLaren. So yeah, they obviously have a long history in Formula One, but we know them as a new entry with Aston Martin, and that came with it, like you said, with a lot of hype and a lot of excitement, and Lawrence Stroll was going to put his cash into it, and it's all going to be very exciting. And newly branded. But yeah, they really wanted even more after snagging a win and a handful of podiums, consistent point finishes last year. They were on the up. They were going to be big challengers. And then pre-season testing happened, and their Mercedes-esque concept really cost them dearly with the aero and the floor regs changes. They never seemed to adapt in the same way that their engine suppliers did. It wasn't all bad news. They still had Vettel doing well to grab a podium in Baku. He obviously had another one taken away from him in Hungary. But either way, they did use strategy well to put themselves in those situations. And both drivers were reasonably matched overall. Taking the season as a whole, they didn't really seem to suffer with a lack of development at any point when you look at their kind of comparative performance across the whole season. And obviously still trying to take their chances where they could right to the end. But with all the hype and all the investment and all the talk, seeing them fail, to get into Q1 or just getting through and then often lacking the pace to even challenge into the points on a semi-regular basis, that's got to sting a little bit considering all the previous year and all the talk and bringing on a 4-time world champion. And yeah, it never really lived up to the excitement, and now they've got it all to do next season instead.
I remember thinking, like you said, living up to the excitement. I do remember thinking at the start of the year when they revealed the car and their drivers, how they really oversold the dream, didn't they? They really oversold it going into the 2021 season. I remember us talking about
they had that very silly video, didn't they, that we talked about, where it had all these sort of strange, vague statements about a glorious future or something. I was like, this is all a bit weird.
Yeah, and
what are you getting at here?
They definitely overpromised and under-delivered, and they have under-delivered by such a large margin. It's been a terrible season for them, and it's not to say that Vettel and Lance haven't been good, because they've both shone and they both had great results. Seb Vettel finishing in second in Baku, like you said, was disqualified eventually in Hungary due to a fuel regulation technicality. Lawrence Stroll's best finish was in P6. Is it Qatar? I think he managed to finish sixth once or twice. I haven't actually got that statistic. But it's just been a bit underwhelming all year round. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly where it went wrong or where it went right. Should we start off with Sebastian Vettel and how his season's carried out? What's your thoughts on Seb Vettel this year?
Yeah, well, whilst the car didn't live up to the hype, I think Vettel was able to bring some good results nonetheless, particularly his two, but really only one podium. As you mentioned before, he also outqualified Stroll 14-8. And in general, he just seemed a lot more relaxed and at ease with his standing in F1 as opposed to all the stress that he was probably dealing with at Ferrari. And I think it was a good environment for him. He obviously felt like he'd been welcomed. That said, he was never quite the clinical driver that we've seen in the past. You know, he had his share of questionable calls and performances. He struggled quite a bit at the start of the season. Perhaps he was still getting used to the car because they had a somewhat limited testing, didn't they? I think they had a limited number of laps and had a few reliability issues. He clumsily ran into the back of Ocon in Bahrain. He called for slicks at Turkey, and that turned out to be a disaster in those conditions. And he had a couple of spins all by himself, like we saw when he was at Ferrari, Silverstone and Zandvoort. He had two notable ones. Once he got more comfortable with the car, he definitely brought in some excellent results. He's still obviously a very, very capable driver, and he's not a four-time world champion for nothing. But it was very difficult for him to make his mark on the grid again when the car just seemed to have no obvious strengths. And one week they would have decent long run pace and stay out on hards for a long time and end up putting it in the points. Like obviously he did something similar with his P5 in Monaco. That was kind of a bit of an exciting moment for him after his podium. Then you'd have another week where suddenly they'd be like P17 and just couldn't get anywhere. So it was always going to be very difficult with the machinery for Vettel to really make his mark. But on a personal level, I think he was a lot more relaxed, and I would imagine that he's very happy where he is, all things considered.
What I see from Vettel this year is kind of what I expect from Bottas next year. A lot more relaxed. His personality has come out a lot more. He's been a lot more joyful to listen to over the radio. He's cracked a lot more jokes. He seemed more at home and more comfortable within the team. And the only really thing to add to Sebastian Vettel's on-track performance is probably his off-track performance and his work with the environmental impact of Formula One. He set up the race in Saudi Arabia, didn't he, for the women?
Race for women,
which was absolutely fantastic. And obviously he's talking about environmental changes, worked very closely with Mick Schumacher as well. So he's just become these things I don't think he was allowed to do at Ferrari because of the politics, because of the image, because of no, you have to be a Ferrari man. You have to do what we say and we say only. I feel like at Aston Martin he can just be himself and he's enjoying that. And I think it's fine. It's a shame that the car is underperforming because it is. If he was in the 2019 Racing Point, I think we would have seen a different Vettel, maybe a little bit of faster Vettel, making some great overtakes. I mean, he was probably second or third on the most overtakes of the year.
He was second.
He was second.
No, he won it. He won it, didn't he?
He won it. Yes, he did. Yeah, because he wanted the million jelly beans.
The jelly beans. That's right. Yeah.
And that's like a great thing. Yes, you've won the most overtakes of the year. It just goes to show that he's not afraid to put that car where it needs to go. But also, does that slightly show that you've maybe not qualified as well as you should have done? It's 6 of one, half dozen the other. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where you could have done better. The car's definitely underperforming. I think Vettel's performing on a great level, on a great level. I can't say he's performing fantastically, incredibly, because actually the car isn't there to do what he wants it to do. But I think he's performing at a great level and should be happy with his season.
Yeah, he does. He just come across as comfortable with his sort of relative elder statesman-like position that he has in Formula One now, and not because he's old. I mean, he's still in his 30s, but he's got a lot of experience, and he's using his position and his experience to not just take advantage of it on the track, but also to pass on a bit of knowledge to the drivers around him, and to leverage his position publicly to show some support for various causes. So he's very much in that point in his career. And yeah, the general vibe is that he's a lot happier. Let's move on to his teammate then. What did you make of Lawrence Stroll's season and his sort of probably has the most secure seat in Formula One right now, except for maybe sort of Max Verstappen, someone like that.
Yeah. Lawrence Stroll. When you say that name and I refer to it as 2021, nothing really pops out. I feel like Lawrence has been a little bit. I don't want to say, we've been using the word absent across the last couple of these podcasts about drivers we don't really hear or see much of. But in Formula One, you need to be doing things.
We
which
have
gets
been talking
noticed.
about the back of the grid.
We have been talking about the back, and we're still on sixth place in the Constructors' Championship, so we're still talking about the back end of the grid. Lance Stroll, I think, has had a little bit of a really underwhelming season himself. Obviously, only scoring 34 points this year, 9 points behind his teammate, so pretty close in comparison. It's been, I think that the phrase underwhelming summarizes everything with regards to Aston Martin this year. I can't remember for the life of me how many points Lance scored in 2020. I'm going to have a quick look, but I should imagine he scored more last year.
More than 34, I'm sure.
Yeah, let me just have a quick look. 2020 Drivers' Championship, Lance Stroll. Where is he? Lance Stroll, Canadian, 75 points in 2020. So not to be able to score
two podiums,
half,
of course.
Yeah, and so not to be able to score half as much as that is pretty bad, and that just goes to show how much that car hasn't gone in the right direction. And whereas other teams, like you mentioned in previous podcasts, Ferrari, sometimes you can have all the money in the world, develop your car, it goes in the wrong direction. You've made a mistake, but you've built a terrible car, which has cost a lot. But you have the financial freedom to then redevelop that car throughout the rest of the season and get it right the next year. Whereas Aston Martin, we're not quite sure about their financial backing at the moment. Obviously, you've got Lawrence Stroll, but they've put all their money in one way, and it's not worked out. The whole aerodynamic, the whole aerodynamic philosophy hasn't worked out this year. Hopefully, going into the 2022 season, it will be better. But despite Lance's underwhelming season, like you said, he's got one of the most secure seats in the house because his father owns, is it the majority of the team or owns the team? I don't know I don't know what his role is, but his dad's there. He's there. I don't think he's going anywhere soon. I like Lance Stroll. I've warmed him over the last couple of years because he's actually put in some really good performances when the time comes and the car's performing, like we've seen in the Racing Point. You just need to see that. A little bit more. Hopefully, the Aston Martin progresses in the right direction going forward.
Yeah, to Stroll's credit, he was fairly evenly matched with his four-time world champion teammate across the whole season. He had more points finishes and just edged him out 11-10 in race results. But I think what the Canadian driver really lacked and still lacks, I think, even after all his years in Formula One now, is just that breakthrough star performance. He had that pole that he got in Turkey in 2020, but he never converted it. You know, he got away in the beginning and then just the whole race seemed to slip through his fingers and he couldn't even keep it in a podium position. That was his opportunity to really be like Lance Stroll, master in the wet. And it just didn't quite land. It might have been Baku as well this year that could have been his breakthrough performance because he was running in P4 when he had that tyre failure. So that wasn't really his fault. But he does often come across as a little bit middle of the road and still hasn't quite pulled together a season that might mark him out as much more than just another F1 journeyman. And one wonders if his dad didn't own the team or his dad wasn't involved in the sport in the way that he is, whether he would still be there. I did nominate him for Driver of the Day twice, I think, for taking advantage of situations and overcoming reasonable deficits to take points. So it's not all bad news. He is capable of a good performance, but whilst Vettel was on the podium and grabbing people's attention with P5 in Monaco, Stroll's best result was P6 at the end of the season in Qatar, when Aston Martin's chances of actually pushing up the constructors' table were all but over. So over the season as a whole, he's done okay. His points are it's not like there's a huge deficit between him and his teammate, and the car is obviously going to be a struggle as well. But yeah, he just lacks that kind of star quality to make a big difference. And I suppose the team is probably relying a little bit more on Sebastian Vettel to make those kind of results come instead.
So going forward into 2022, we've got the same drivers, we've got the same team, not many changes in the management structure at all, if any. Where do you see Aston Martin in 2022? Where do you see them? Do you see them on a kind of Williams path and slowly but surely progressing in the right direction? Or do you see them in a bit Alfa Romeo and potentially dropping off even further? Or maintaining the course? Do you think sixth place, is it sixth they're in? Yeah, do you reckon sixth place is where they'll finish finish next year?
Well, the money and the resources behind what is ostensibly Lawrence Stroll's big project suggest that they could be a major player under the new regulations because they've got the backing and they're building like a new wind tunnel and all these facilities. But it could take time for them to establish themselves, so they might need a bit of patience in that regard. I think I'd be more comfortable betting on simply a slightly stronger midfield showing with the odd shot at a podium maybe next year if they can capitalise on moments of chaos. But I'm not particularly confident that they're going to suddenly shoot up with the big players. I think that it will just be another decent midfield showing. And in the long run, if they make the right investments and they make good calls and they design a good car, yeah, we could see Aston Martin as a potential championship winning team in the future, because a lot of thought has gone into making the right calls and spending money on facilities and the like, and really rejuvenating this team that's had a lot of struggles in previous years. And when you think about the Sahara Force India days and when they were, they sort of went into administration or whatever it is when they had to become Racing Point and the like, they've had a lot of struggles. And so this is their rejuvenation. But they're not exactly the first team in Formula One to have someone rich turn up and throw a lot of money and resources at it and have them not really go anywhere. So slightly uncertain future. I'm predicting a kind of slightly stronger midfield showing for them next year.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you said. It could go either way. And like you said, just because you've got the money, it doesn't mean that you're going to go in the right direction. It can go one of two ways. I just need to correct a statement I made earlier. I said that the team were 6th place. They're actually in 7th place this year. That's how bad they were. But they're
7th with 77 points.
Oh, very consistent, like Haas with 0 points and 0 across the board. So, consistency is key. But yeah, I think I like to hope that Aston Martin bounce back a little bit better next year and amongst the midfield, really fighting the others, and we can have an even better midfield battle than we did this year.
Right, thanks very much for listening. Do send us any thoughts or questions that you have on Aston Martin's season or any of the team's season to us at RacePerMinute on Twitter. You can get in touch at RacePerMinute.com or comment below if you're on YouTube. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to give us a like or a 5-star rating or whatever rating level it is, depending on where you're listening to us. And if you really like what we do, then you can subscribe for more and you'll get all the episodes straight into your inbox or onto your podcast app or on YouTube, etc. If you really like what we do, then you can see at the start of this episode, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see that we list our patrons. We are very fortunate to have Nathan Freeman at the moment, who is at our race engineer tier. You can donate as little as £1 a month at patreon.com/raceperminute and help support the show. Grab yourself some lovely rewards, get yourself more involved with the community. And it just would really help us out. We've set a sort of modest goal to try and cover the costs of doing the podcast. But consider it if you're following us, if you listen to lots of episodes, then just £1 a month would make all the difference. Moving on to the next episode, then we'll be talking about I believe it's Alpine, isn't it? Yes, they are in their 6th place finish, so we'll be able to have a little chat about. It'll be AlphaTauri. I've scrolled too far up my notes. That's only got myself to blame. It is AlphaTauri next, yes, and we'll be talking about the Faenza outfit and how they did in 2021. So we'll see you there for that.
See you there.